What if there was knowledge, Kurt, that was so volatile, so earth shattering, that the mere knowledge of that getting out could predicate an action that could potentially threaten the entire species? Now, what do I mean by that? For just a moment, take off the scientific hat, take off your humanitarian hat, take off your philanthropic hat, and put on a hat of national security. We just talked about the fact that there's no indication that these things have been here to help us. Okay, so there's really only three possibilities: they're benign, or if you will, benevolent, or two, they are malevolent, they're here to hurt us, or three, they're just here to observe us, and they're capable of doing both good and bad like us. Well, if you were to put on your national security hat for a second, let's say you're a general from the 1950s or 60s, and your job is to protect America and all things good and great, and the height of the Cold War, and you've got the Soviet bear across there, and things are pretty tough, right? And nuclear proliferation is a real thing. Now, you have information that there is something here that can outperform anything you have, and really anything you have is rather ineffective from a national security perspective. And there's a thing out there, and it doesn't show that it's being benevolent. So it's only one of two other options: either malevolent or it's like us. And we see this very careful ISR surveillance of our nuclear equities. It's interested in nuclear equities. Well, some may look at that as what we call preparation for the battlefield. Okay. And let's just say hypothetically, there's a 10% chance, US has a 10% chance that these things are bad, or one day they're going to come here in force, and they're looking at us, right? Remember, you're putting on your national security hat. So forget about everything else for a moment. Your job is to be paranoid. And there's a small remote chance that these things are not good. And maybe there is a plan for these things at some point to come in force in 50 years from now. And if the mere fact you have this conversation with the American people, what's going to happen? Well, the American people are going to start getting prepared. Well, I can tell you in real life combat situations, when we send in long range surveillance LRS teams, behind enemy lines, the moment the enemy finds out that we know, that they know we're there, the surprise element of surprise is over. And so ultimately, hypothetically, imagine a scenario where maybe we had 50 years to prepare for something, but now that the cat's out of the bag, that existential action will happen tomorrow. And by the way, we're not ready for it. We're not prepared for it. We don't have a countermeasure. We don't have a capability to counter this. And so from a very real perspective, a national security perspective, the mere fact that you are acknowledging the existence of something may predicate an action or an act that you're not prepared to have right now. And so I encourage you and your listeners to just for a moment, I'm not asking you to be a national security person, but I'm asking you to suspend your personal beliefs right now for just a moment and put yourself in somebody else's shoes who does feel that way, right? Now, what do? If the mere fact of talking about this could potentially cause a reaction that you're not ready for as a country, as a civilization, right? Maybe that's the reason why you decide to only brief certain presidents who have a background in intelligence. Maybe they were former directors of CIA, but the other presidents who are career politicians will be, they're here today, gone in 4 years. Maybe you can't even risk telling them. And so maybe the reason why this has been kept secret so long is actually, in a weird sense, some sort of sense of patriotism by people. And maybe that's how they justify it. And I'll leave that at that as a counterpoint of forcing people to think maybe a little bit non-traditionally. Now, do I think if that happened to ever be the case, that's a good explanation? No. I still think that we have to be honest with the American people. It's like I've said this before, it's like going to the doctor. Just because I have cancer, it's bad news. Don't keep that from me. I want to know, because maybe there's a chance I can do something about it, right? And so, but do I understand that mentality? Sure, nobody wants to give anybody bad news. Now, am I saying that's the case? No, I'm not. It's just you asked me one of the reasons why people would want to keep this secret. Well, that's a really damn good reason why people may want to keep this secret, because the mere fact of not keeping it secret could cause a reaction that you're not ready for yet. There's nothing you can do. You don't have a countermeasure. So again, from a national security perspective, that makes sense. Again, I don't agree with it, but that